Hey y'all, welcome to Winning at Life. I am your host, Gregory Ricks. So welcome to the show. I want to give a shout out to our sponsors for today's show. That'd be Dwayne Stein of MortgageGumbo.com, Jude Heath of J. Heath Company CPAs, Wesley Blanchard of W.J. Blanchard Law, JJS Audio Video.com, Pat Huber over at First South Farm Credit.com, and iHeartMedia as well. There's like a couple others. I can't forget this because I hate mosquitoes. NewOrleans.mosquitojoe.com. Y'all probably hate mosquitoes too, so I'm a big fan of that company. Spitali's Deli in Metairie. And of course, the show wouldn't be possible without the support from Gregory Ricks Total Wealth, which you can find out more about Gregory Ricks Total Wealth at gregoryricks.com. And once again, I may or may not have gave a shout out to iHeartMedia.com. Big support for our shows that have been going back way more than a decade as well. Now, you can also find us on your YouTube channel. If it's not on your YouTube channel, then maybe it should be, and that's Gregory Ricks Total Wealth. So look us up on YouTube and subscribe for more financial content. And we're going to have a new episode landing every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Might not have used the best terminology there for those geeks that are good at that, but I tell you what, I'm becoming every day a bigger fan of YouTube. And there's a number, I'm always about learning, and that's one reason we're doing this for you is so that you could learn more and become really great in the financial world and making great financial decisions, and hopefully sharing that as well. Move to my topics for today. I'm interviewed often for newspaper articles, interviews for TV, and so forth over the years. And this was a really great one by Stevie, and that is for George's Media and NOLA.com, I believe, and The Advocate as well. Sometimes I don't get all those names right. A lot of stuff going on there as well. But the discussion was about community-driven financial literacy. It is important to become a student and learning as well. So one of the things I talked to her about, I've been doing radio for 16 years or so, television for years, and the written media as well. Probably where you know me from is probably iHeartRadio maybe. Also, you might know me as a public speaker and advocate of financial literacy and founder and CEO of Gregory Ricks Total Wealth. So when I started doing the radio show years ago, there was a time I worried about giving away too many trade secrets. There was an event that I went to, and we were often doing this in the early days where we would do public meetups and signings regarding meeting with the public. So sometimes it'd be at a restaurant, sometimes at a bar, and we'd get to meet the audience, and they'd come to meet us and talk. And there's like all of a sudden, there was financial guys, competitors in the marketplace that would be there, and they say, "Oh yeah, we listened to your show. I learned so much. And some of the things you've talked about, I shared with clients," and I'm like, "What?" I'm thinking to myself, what am I? what am I doing there? And I had trouble with that, but I changed my mind after reading about a farmer in Georgia who was known for producing excellent yields of corn. In an interview, he was asked, because his corn is ridiculous in the quality of it and the production. And he was being interviewed about it, and he was asked, what is your secret? He replied, I share my seeds with my neighbors. If they grow poor crops, it could affect mine as well. And then we would all suffer. So I make sure everybody has the best seeds. That really hit home with me, because I am about everybody doing better, and I started showing appreciation to those even in the financial community listening to my show, checking out my podcast, checking out my YouTube channel, reading my articles there, because we want them to get better. There's even recently, there's some firms I'm affiliated with, and I would even recommend they reach out to certain people in the community. I said, hey, why don't you guys hire them? Why don't you see if you could offer your services to them and help them do better? Why? The reality is I can't take care of every investor in the marketplace. And that's not realistic to think so. But what we want is everybody providing a much better service to that. So at Gregory Ricks and Associates, our team understands that financial questions can be difficult to discuss at times. However, they believe that normalizing productive discussions about money and increasing access to educational resources can help families and communities move forward. So that's why I'm more of this sharing mind and helping. And we have a lot of resources over at gregoryricks.com for you to utilize as well. Now, as far as from literacy standpoint, there's big questions, and there's a lot at stake here when we talk about this. Throughout many conversations with listeners and clients and educational attendees over the years, a few questions consistently rise to the surface. While finances are deeply personal, revisiting common topics can help individuals take the next step in planning. You know, one thing I've always liked doing is surveys over the years when we have events that people come to. And the number one question consistently is, will my money last? And everybody's situation is different on that. It doesn't mean I can give you the secret to it to make sure that it lasts, because everybody's different, and you know the road ahead for all of us is unknown. There's a topic here in another article I'm thinking about discussing with you at some point. Retirement's not the problem. It's the decades ahead. Think about it. It's a lot unknown, and that's one reason it's got to be revisited here. And a big question, number one question I want to talk with you about today, and I've got a few topics, but when should I take Social Security? The one most common and often underestimated topic involves Social Security decisions, timing, spousal coordination, long-term strategy all play a role. Yet many individuals claim benefits without fully evaluating their options. Sometimes they're not even coordinating with each other. It's like, yeah, Shelley turned it on because she could. She said it's her money. She wants it now. But y'all should coordinate that. Or I could say Ben did the same decision, turning it on early. I remember having a discussion. I kind of did the math if they wait, you know, and I don't remember that number, but as a pretty big number. I said, I can give you 324,000 reasons to wait. And you know what that was how much more they would likely accumulate as an estimate of that over time. If they would wait, they could accumulate more in benefits. Those were dollars was the reasons. Swap reasons for dollars. That's why I suggested that. And sometimes people look at it as a small decision, but I'm going to give you another way to look at it. It's really a big one. If someone is turning on $20,000 a year in Social Security, that represents hundreds of thousands of dollars over time. Look at it this way. If you're turning on $20,000 a year and there's two of you in the household and both of you are turning on $20,000, that's a $40,000 decision. It represents, if you had assets to generate income, and I kind of like using a 4% income stream to represent the capability of assets. So if you've got $1 million and you're turning on a retirement stream from that, what's 4% of that? It's $40,000. So each of you have a $500,000 decision is the impact of turning that Social Security. Combined, you're making a household $1 million decision. I think you should get counseling. You should look at different scenarios of turning it on. And it doesn't always mean that both of you should wait. Sometimes we're doing this where maybe the spouse should, the non-working spouse or the lower income or the lower Social Security benefit might should just go ahead and turn it on now because it doesn't pay to wait, because the other's creating the larger benefit. The larger leave behind benefit is one thing to look at from that standpoint. So it's Social Security is a giant decision, and it also correlates with the capability of your other assets. And sometimes we would talk about, well, how do I defer? I kind of need that money. Well, sometimes we need to look at, maybe we need to create a Social Security bridge that allows you to put off turning that decision on. But don't turn it on just because you qualify, and don't turn it on just because you want to take the money, and you should coordinate it with each other. It's a decision. It's a household decision, I believe. Another frequent concern is longevity, specifically whether retirement savings will stretch far enough. The question often leads to broader discussions about income planning, risk management, and sustainable withdrawal schedules. People want to be sure they don't outlive their money. Kind of fundamentally, if you've read my book or heard me tell the story about Dad dying a long time ago in an offshore accident, Mom coming into a considerable amount of money, and then decade later, I'm going to jump short in the story, decade later, she went through most of that money, which led to me thinking about being in this business. I was quite young back then, but it also led to me going into this industry, and also fundamentally how I think about money. And I like to always kind of think about, when we're talking about will the money last, is what does it look like the next 5, 10, 15 years, your retirement plan? And let's say you are within a few years of retiring, and that's going to be turning on here in just a few years. And then you should be looking at, well, what's it look like in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years out? And then if that is looking good, because one of the things, and how my mind works, where do I really look? I build out a plan for a family. I'm kind of looking out at 10 years. How does that look compared today? Then I'll bounce back 15. Okay, look out at 15. Then I'll jump out to 30 years. Then I'll jump out to, depending on their age, we might go and look out at age 90, 100, 105. I'm just telling you, I'm doing that. I might not discuss that with you initially, but what we're wanting to get to is this going well? And then and I don't want to miss this, but you're probably wondering, well, why would you look out at age 105 or 110? I'm not going to live that long. No, what it tells me, though, is if you have assets that's going to be left behind, meaning you still have assets behind, this is going to go pretty well for you throughout retirement. If I look out there at 105 and the account shows 0, let's back up. Where does it get there? Where's our tolerance for running out of money? Or is this broken and such? So like when I'm looking at 5, 10, 15 years initially, if that's not looking good, we're going to have that discussion. Sometimes that leads to, and the big question people come in with is a lot of time, when can I retire? I'd like to retire now. When can I retire? I'm kind of like tired. Sometimes the discussion is, yeah, you're going to have to work a few more years. That's not a fun discussion. The fun answer is on the second meeting we're having is, yeah, you're working only because you want to. Man, those people, that's such a fun meeting. You can see happiness all over their face. They're not making a decision to retire, but what happens inevitably is a few months later, they call up and said, yeah, we need to start working together. I need to set up a meeting. I've put in my notice. You know, it's kind of like when they find out they don't have to work, they're like moving on in that case. So another part of this is understanding efficient tax strategies. Understanding how taxes work is key to maintaining healthy finances and working towards a more secure retirement. Taxes, it turns out, is something you can control and plan for. And you could even have opportunities where we're opting out of taxes. You know, it's like, where are those strategies that I can opt out of having to pay taxes? A lot of that involves Roth strategies. How can we strategically shift assets over time to make that more efficient? If we can reduce taxes, guess what? Your assets can last longer. Your income's more efficient, and you're netting more money as a result. Without a clear understanding of how different income sources are taxed, individuals may unknowingly reduce their long-term wealth. And that's one reason to work with a financial professional to explore individualized tax-efficient strategies. We do throughout the year a number of educational events on those topics as well. And the last topic is building financial confidence through community. Growing up, money wasn't something we talked about. I think that needs to change. Families should be having open discussions with everyone so you can learn and grow together. And it was never talked in the household growing up. When I asked questions about it, nobody would really want to discuss it. Even when Mom came into that money, it turns out what I learned long after is some of the things she did. Is like, oh my God, she did that. She did that. You know, is just kind of surprising. But I think we need to think about sharing, and you should be teaching your children about investing and saving and the purpose of that. You know, as a teenager, I really became fascinated with compounding interest. Hey, I like making money. I always did side jobs working. Even from age 9, I started mowing lawns to make extra money. So money kind of had a purpose. And yeah, and what would I spend up? Cars as probably one of the reasons there. But it fascinated me. but it didn't come from parents' discussions. Heck, I probably should have started asking them if they understood. Maybe here's some ideas you might should utilize. I didn't think that way. If I had to do over again, yeah, maybe I needed to be coaching them at a young age about that and ask why more, but they just weren't open to talking about. Nobody is, and we need to change that culture. And then from the other end, instead of parents talking to you, you might be in a situation where you might want to talk to your parents. Like, so tell me a little bit about your retirement planning. How is that going? How is your retirement going? What type of income? Do you have a plan for the income? Can you tell me about the financial advisory firm you're working with? Who do you see there? They should be working with somebody. If they're not, oh, that's a concern. Then that could next move on to what are some of your estate planning? Do you have some POAs? Do you have a will? I think those are two core things that you should have right there. In fact, it's so important. We as a firm at Gregory Ricks Total Wealth are making a shift on that as well, so that it is a part of our advanced planning. When somebody goes through our process of working with us and getting help with their investing, their savings, their retirement planning, their income planning, and they decide to work with us, once we've worked through that process and they've onboarded with us, they've reached that binder delivery visit, what we talk about in that visit is what's next, and that's the advanced planning. And part of that advanced planning is powers of attorney and your will. I think those are critical documents, because we don't know when something might happen. You might have a fall accident, which happens to a lot of people, it turns out, and get injured. You might become incapacitated, auto accident. We don't know, but you should have a POA. And then, of course, what we do know is everybody dies. We don't know when, but it's going to happen. People that were walking around our town 100 years ago in the 1920s, they're not here anymore. Just think about that. Well, 70, 80 years, whoever was listening, we're not going to be here anymore. I'm not going to be here 50 years from now. I hope I'm around another 20, 30 or so, but we have no certainty of that. That's why you need a will. It is part of the discussions. Now, with that said, at some time you're going to move into a retirement phase or needing income. We're not always going to work. Don't want to or can't. I like work. I always like being busy. I don't have a plan at this point I'm stopping. Plan to go from now. But what dictates that ultimately for everybody is health. And that's why you need a retirement plan. And so you need to be building that knowledge, and you need to be like the farmer. We need to be sharing that knowledge with others so everybody around us does better. We don't need to be having everybody around us doing poorly, and then all of a sudden, hey, Dad, can I get some money? Hey, Uncle, can you help a brother out? Just think about it that way. I'd like everybody to be doing really well, that we have abundance, that we're all passing along. It's a greater place, a greater time. And these discussions we need to have with family members. And if they don't want to discuss it, don't press the issue. You've kind of made a dent right there by bringing it up. Just circle back. Don't do it over Sunday dinners or family gatherings, but find opportunity on the side. You just don't want to make it in case they push back, because some people will feel like you roughed them up by asking about it. They'll take it personal. Sometimes they push back because they don't have a plan. They're not working with anybody. They don't have money. I can tell you a quick story. I had that discussion a client had came in and said, you know, I bring it up to my parents and they just won't ever discuss it. They kind of push back. Recently, they got upset with me a little bit about bringing it up. And I said, you've done this a few times. I said, here's what might be happening. They don't have a plan, and they don't actually have money saved. Now, how did they show up? And I knew her folks. They showed up like they have money. They would even help pay for stuff for her kids and stuff. But they're living, as it turned out, came out later, yeah, they were living month to month. And that's why they push back. So sometimes think about it that way. And you're finding out something you need to know. And when she found out, she stopped all that helping and stuff. That no, we're not taking any money, because the truth kind of came out. So you got to think about that in that way. Let's see. I've got a couple of things I want to mention to you here. Now, hopefully this was of value to you today. I had fun doing this episode. So reach out to us. If you're looking for help, reach out to Gregory Ricks Total Wealth. The phone number is one number no matter where you're calling from. For whatever reason, 504-832-9200. The email is info@gregoryricks.com. And now you know the website, gregoryricks.com. We offer in-person and virtual meetings. And a new episode of Winning at Life is going to release every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Listen to us Saturdays, 10 to 12 on iHeartRadio. And all of this information can be found at gregoryricks.com. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Share this with others. Share the YouTube channel. Share the website when you talk about your family. And if they're not working with somebody, tell them, hey, just reach out to Gregory's office.